coming. The past informs the present. And Mary Ann's book reflects the Hawaiian concepts generated between 350 and 1250. And that's when the ohana ruled. When the family, the ohana, the extended family, was the centerpiece of the Hawaiian culture. And that's where the aloha spirit comes from, really. It was generated at that time, and there's been a resurgence of that since the 70s, of the Hawaiian traditional values. But something happened at 1250 that changed the Hawaiian Islands, and that was the landing of the Tahitians. And in 1250, they brought their chickens, their pigs, some stowed away rats, and they brought the 2,000-year-old Polynesian kapu system. And this was in place from 1250 to 1819. So that's 600 years of a very strict, harsh system that was the Hawaiian Islands and the people in the Hawaiian Islands. So they had alihi, which were the royals. They had commoners, and they had slaves, which surprised me. And the slaves were marked with a red dot on their forehead, which is kind of weird. I thought, wow, that's strange. But they did. They had a very strict social strata. And they had priests who enforced these kapus. Kapus were the laws that couldn't be broken. And the priest would club you to death if you broke one of the rules, like if you walked in the shadow of a chief. You could be clubbed to death for this. So it was and it called for human sacrifice. So when the Tahitians landed, the chief Pa'o sacrificed thousands of Hawaiians. So there's a lot about the Hawaiian culture that the Hawaiians don't talk about. So they give you the aloha spirit, which is there, and they do offer you a warm and loving heart. But I think it's important for you to understand that even though the aloha spirit is prevalent, it's not an accurate look at their culture. So what I want to talk to you about is accepting your greatness. Now this is a basic Hawaiian precept that comes from the ohana time. And that is that you're born, you come into this world perfect. You are born without guilt to be assuaged. And your job is to discover your uniqueness, to uncover it, to explore it, to nurture it, and to protect it. And once you've done this, you have to believe in your greatness and have the strength and the vision to bring it to full expression. And I would say that's authenticity. So what's this got to do with Kahumanu? What's this got to do with Wai-nani? Well, Wai-nani was inspired by the life of Kahumanu, who was the favorite wife of Kamehameha the Great. Now, you probably have heard of Kamea. You may have even heard of her. But what she was his favorite wife, and he had 32 wives, so that's no small accomplishment. And she was a childless bride. So normally in history, women are only important because they gave birth to someone. But this woman was important because she was brave, she was athletic, she was strong, she was passionate, she was caring, intelligent, centered in herself. And I saw her as the role model and forerunner of the modern woman. And she became inspiration for my character, Wai-nani. So my book is set in the most dynamic time frame of the Hawaiian culture. That's from 1750 to 1819, when Kamehameha brought the islands, united the Hawaiian Islands. There was a prophecy that a warrior would be born who would unite the Hawaiian Islands. They were very warring. They were very aggressive. They were very violent and during this Tahitian time. So she ruled with him, shoulder to shoulder, because she was smart. So I was introduced to this character in the 70s during a time when women were breaking out of their molds. And I was questioning many of the ideas that had been handed down to me by my own mother. So I was trying to find my own way. And I strongly identified with this woman. And I had a passion for knowing more about her and knowing more about Hawaiian culture. So when I graduated from CSUN in Northridge with an English degree, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. I didn't know if I had the goods to be a writer. Teaching was what I could do, and at the time I could go to Watts. Teach in Watts didn't appeal to me. So I dropped out of society for 1 year, literally dropped out, and dropped in to the North Shore of Kauai, which happened to be a wonderful place to be. And I became a dedicated beach bum. And my biggest decision was what book I was going to read, what beach I was going to go to, and where I was going to go dancing that night. So I took a job as a cub reporter on the Garden Isle, which is the little newspaper there on Kauai. And it happened to be the bicentennial year of the landing of Captain James Cook. So 1978 and 1778. And I had the ability to interview anybody on the island. I could just call anybody and say, "Oh, would you like to have a little piece in the newspaper?" So I got to talk to a lot of important people on the island, and I got really deeply involved with the Hawaiian culture. So this went on. That was the beginning of it. That's when the idea took root in my heart, but it went on for like 20 years that I went back and forth to the islands and pursued knowing more about their culture. So one of the reasons my character's name is Wai-nani is because she asks the why questions. All right? She, literally, her name means beautiful water. And she was a water baby, like all Hawaiians, and she spent at least half of her life in Moana, the grand and vibrant sea. And she asked her mother in the first chapter, she questions things in the first chapter, and she asked her mother, "Do you believe the story of Vaikia and Papa, the most accepted creation myth in Polynesian cosmology? Vaikia was so desirous of his dazzling daughter that he fooled his wife into thinking separate houses were needed for men and women for eating. And he did this because it allowed him to be with his daughter without his wife knowing." So, this outrageous act was the genesis of separate eating houses for men and women that went on for 2,000 years in the Polynesian Kapu system. So Wai-nani questions this because she knows she is equal to her brother and the other warriors in sport and intellect, and she feels she should be able to sit with the warriors at the end of the day and be part of their talk. In other words, she feels equal to men and doesn't see why she should be treated any differently. So she stands up at a very early age. She's very courageous. She enters a surfing competition restricted to male warriors. And to make matters worse, she does this on the back of her pet dolphin. And she wins. So now you may think that having a pet dolphin is a little magical realism, and it is, and I interjected this into the story. She has a relationship of 40 years with Iku and his dolphin family. But human beings have been interacting with dolphins since the Greeks, and there's nothing in the story that I didn't read about or see somewhere. So even the dolphin behavior here is well researched and authentic. So this defiant act angers her father, who is the ruling chief of Hanamaui. And she's witnessed him putting people to death for lesser offenses, so this is no small deal. And he says that she has to get married to one of his warriors. She should behave like a woman. She should have children and be quiet. She should not make waves. So she leaves with her dolphin playmate Iku, and she swims to the Big Island, where she meets a solitary warrior named Makaha. Makaha is based on the life of Kamehameha the Great, and the book travels his 40-year rise in power pretty accurately. So he leaves her because he decides he has to go back to Kealakua Bay, where the center of their culture was on the Big Island, and he has to get busy uniting the Hawaiian Islands. So she's left alone, totally alone. So she becomes centered in her aloneness. She's strengthened through adversity. And this is, she goes into the sea and she touches base with her spirituality, with her Amakua, the spiritual guardians. She becomes more centered. Her existence is just good enough just being her. Nothing outside of her necessary. So this is the classic path of Joseph Campbell's Power of the Myth, the hero and the power of the myth. If any of you have read that book, my storyline follows along the way Joseph Campbell says it ought to. She touches bottom. She has to touch bottom before she can move forward in life, and she does. She goes to Kealakua Bay. She says, I'm Makaha's wife. And she is sent to the woman's house. They were separated when they were in their period, into the woman's house, and there she meets the sacred bride. And she and the sacred bride, who is to become the mother of Kamehameha's son, they romp off together, and they eat the red banana, which was kapu. So you can't eat pork, you can't eat bananas if you're a woman. You have all these kapus against you. And they eat the banana and nothing happens. So this tells her, and this is a very important lesson in life, this tells her that the kapu system is only powerful in the minds of those who believe it is so. So no one has power over you that you don't give to them. If you believe they have power over you, they do. And if you don't, they don't. So the sacred bride turns out to, Makaha has to marry the sacred bride because he has to have a ruling son, and the sacred bride's royal, and so on. So now she has to overcome low emotions like anger, rage, jealousy. Anger because she can't conceive. She wants to have a baby, his baby. And, this is a very hard time for her. But the Hawaiians, another basic concept for the Hawaiians is that you have to rise above low emotions, and you have to forgive in order to be whole. So they believe you come into this world with a bowl of light, and that life can stir up angry emotions, and that these emotions can calcify like stones in your center, blocking you from receiving mana. Mana, the spiritual power that's in the cosmos that all religions take you to one way or another. So in the Hawaiian culture, hula was a very big opportunity to receive mana. They put their fingertips up like antenna, and when they were born, they would massage their fingers to narrow tips to be more receptive to mana. So their whole world was about that. We know the hula as being a fun and beautiful dance, but it was really a meditation. And in the beginning, the men did it, and it was a war dance. So life goes on. She's intelligent, and when Cook lands, she overcomes her emotions. She becomes best friends with the sacred bride. She helps with the rearing of the child, and so on. So when Cook lands, she observes that the white men break all of the kapus, trash all of the beliefs, and nothing happens. So she realizes, well, this kapu system just really isn't real. This is just, I can't go for this. And she wants to impact change. So I think that takes bravery. And she also faces down danger when she doesn't relinquish her sexual freedom. So you might think that in Hawaii that was very sexually free society, and it was. Men had wives, more wives, the women had husbands. But she was having a dalliance with a chief who was a danger to Makaha. So he assigned a dwarf to her to be with her at all times. And if she had an affair, the dwarf was to tell him. And she did, and he did, and he attempts to kill her. And he chases her in his canoe. She's swimming. He's in his war canoe. And he catches her, but she outwits him. She confronts him. She's like water. She goes around her problem. She dissolves her problem. She doesn't aggress, because aggression only leads to more aggression. So the feminine way to deal with trouble is to be like water. So she confronts him with the truth of his lineage, which is something that I'm not going to disclose now, but it stops him in his tracks. Before it's over, he's sobbing and on his knees and asking her to forgive him. So, because of her courage, because of her wisdom, she becomes the most beloved of royals. She is a healing kumu, which means that she knows about the medicines and the plants, the way to heal. And she's the lifelong confidant of Makaha. And when he dies, he bestows upon her the title of Kuhini Alihi Nui, which is like being the prime minister. And she has equal weight to rule with his son. Now, this is unheard of. This happened in 1810 when Kamehameha died. And now her trouble really begins, because she's a threat to the ruling powers, and and the priests, and they attempt to kill her. So now she must lift a dragon's tail from her path. Now she must really be clever. First of all, she has to survive the attempts of the priests to pray her to death. Well, we know if you don't believe in it, you can't do it. So she just becomes more strong in adversity, and the Sacred Bride helps her through this. And together, they end the 2,000-year-old kapu system. And this is a true story, and I think that even today, she is a controversial figure in Hawaii, because some see her as the loving mother of the people who freed them from this very, very harsh system, and others see her as the flaw that brought down the chieftain. And of course, there are a lot of unhappy Hawaiians today who resent the fact that their culture has been pretty much ripped out from them. Their island is, a lot of them can't afford to live there, so there's a little bit of unhappiness there, but they're basically loving people. So there were physical challenges in writing this story that I had to overcome. There were too many K words. I had to change the names to protect the innocent, which is me, and to make it more palatable for Western readers. I couldn't use modern words like plastic and snap you out of that time period. I imitated the rhythms of their poetry. They're very poetic. Their melees, their oles, their songs, their dance, their talk story, all of it. I imitated the way that they go. And I chose my truths, because in an oral tradition, things change as it's handed down. So, and particularly when all of the earliest chronicles were written in the prism of Christianity, because they taught the Hawaiians how to read and write. And so a lot of the stories are corrupted in that way. So I took every effort to be true to the culture, and over a 20-year period, I visited all the sacred places around the islands I could. I went to her birthplace, her cave in Hana. I read all the oldest chronicles. I interviewed kumus. But the emotional challenge was greater than any of the physical challenges I had to face in writing this book. And in the end, I had to lift the dragon tail from my path, because I was told by a Hawaiian scholar, I gave my book to a Hawaiian scholar to read, and she said, if you publish the story, it will not be well received by the descendants of the best loved icons in Hawaiian history, and as what is more, you will receive 200 years of bad luck.
Oh my goodness.
Now, this was a real dilemma for me, because I had really invested myself in this story, and I believed that it was too beautiful not to share. And who wants a love child born DOA? It was hard. It took me a year to build up the courage, and here's what Maya Angelou had to say about the conflict in a writer. There is no greater agony than hearing an untold story inside you that needs to be told. So I went to the Bishop Museum, and I stood before Kahumana's picture, and I asked her if she wanted me to tell her story. Now, I don't believe in channeling, but I imagined that she gave me permission. So I moved forward. I published my book, and if I hadn't, I would have remained psychologically blocked, frustrated, angry, and not the joyous person I am today. And my book was well received by Hawaiians, Hapahalis, that's half Hawaiian, and Westerners alike. Now, there have been a few detractors. There are some Hawaiians who will always resent an outsider for rewriting their history. But this is often the risk that authors face. So I hope that my telling of Kahumanu, or Wai-nani's story, which became my story, will inspire women of all ages to lift the dragon tails from their path, to be true to themselves no matter the cost, to feel empowered to follow their dreams, to listen to and follow their inner voice, to dare to demand answers to difficult questions, to take adversity as a path to self-discovery, to accept your greatness and revel in being the star that you are.